Thank you for joining us.
All right, I started the recording. You can go ahead, Mikkilynn.
Thank you. So I'm Mikkilynn Olmsted. I'm at MSU Denver, and I teach in the English and Gender and Women's Studies departments. And for about a year and a half, I have been working on how to incorporate journaling or notebooking into my courses across all levels. And this is something I've been doing for a long time. I've been at MSU Denver for 18 years. So I've been doing this for a while. But we have Canvas now. We used to have Blackboard, and I'm sort of stuck. So I'm asking for some assistance. And my idea here is that we talk about the value of journaling and notebooking or commonplace books in education today. And then we can talk about Canvas workarounds that I've tried and what's working, what isn't. And then hopefully there are ideas on how to think differently, work differently, and maybe even convince Canvas, maybe. So commonplace books are pretty common actually throughout education, throughout humanity. We have things that are pre-medieval all the way through. Maybe you recognize some of our scientists and philosophers and writers. So the idea of gathering information that other people have talked about in conversation, or you've come across throughout the day, or you've read, is not new. And part of this situation that I find myself in, and that MSU Denver, frankly, is in, is that Canvas just doesn't have a tool specifically for journaling or notebooking. And some of the pushback that I've read about and that I myself have heard is that journaling is passe, that we don't do this anymore, or this is a digital age. Maybe this doesn't fit in the way that we teach anymore. And I think just the opposite, that journaling and notebooking is anti-racist, it is trauma-informed, and it connects with writing to learn. So there's that cognitive process that's happening. There's the self-regulation that comes with the agency to pick up a notebook or a journal or an app and begin to connect what happened in class with what happens in the world around us. And it's anti-racist, or could be, because it validates the cultural capitals. So students can take what they learn in a classroom and then go out and see, how do their community members engage in this now? How are they networking with this idea that we're working in class? Or how are the ways that they're resisting these ideas that are showing up in whatever it is, the content that we're doing? So MSU Denver is an HSI. We have 32% students that claim Latin backgrounds. That's just one portion of our diversity. We tend to have students who are non-traditional, or they're in their late 20s when they come. They work, we're a commuter campus. So we start with students who are largely underrepresented or misrepresented in academia, and allowing them to take something that we're reading, or some film that we've watched, or a theory that we've worked on, and then adapting the lesson really by saying, okay, where do I see these concepts showing up in my life? And how do I have the cultural knowledge and the confidence and the awareness already to engage in this? Really shows support. So part of the cultural capital here is belonging. It's feeling motivated and encouraged to continue, and then to see yourself in this role or in this space. Journaling can also be ungraded or holistically graded. So there's not this linear thinking, instead it's nonlinear. And I think honestly, that's part of the reason why we're struggling to find a solution that really truly allows for a journaling access. Another problem, as I understand this now, after 18 months of working on this, is that sometimes the argument has been, this is only humanities based, or this is only English, or only literature, or only language. And I disagree entirely, because I know that there are studies coming out already about the ways that STEM can use journaling and notebooking. So in December of 22, there were a tri-institutional study from San Francisco State and Purdue and one other institution, and using physics and journaling. So instead of just creating a lab notebook, students said, oh, we don't see how our life experiences are showing up in the lessons and the scholars that we're studying. what can we do about that? And supplemental instruction stepped in and said, well, what about a journal? And now after they've done this longitudinal study, they're saying, look, it did build the skill set, and most importantly, it built retention. English has been talking about this for forever. I mean, the writing and journaling, it's really built into our scholarship. One of the ways that we talk about it is really in retention. How do we keep students engaged? Well, again, this goes towards this belonging. How do we help them see that what they've read or what we're thinking about connects to their lives? And I'm going to pause for a second and see. Oh, okay. Just checking the chat. Thank you. Okay, so again, this idea that journaling and notebooking isn't just for the humanities. It can and is being applied in STEM, and that it's anti-racist because it can come from this, what the students can connect with first, and then work toward how they see themselves later on in the field or in the discipline. So at MSU Denver already, you'll see some of the programs that we're using this in, well, using journaling in some form. So psychology does it, social work does it, nutrition does it, gender and women's studies, modern languages, art. In English, if we had a tool in Canvas, we would have 2,600, a little bit more than that, students a semester who could potentially use this. So we have a pretty big audience. We used to use Blackboard's journaling and blog tool, and it was fantastic. And we adapted it in a lot of different ways in our writing and literature courses. And I don't know about how the other disciplines adapted it, but I know that now it's gone. And so these are the faculty who have reached out to me to say, yes, we'd be interested. We also have nursing and the master's program in healthcare management have also been interested. Our writing center, of course, grounds their tutoring based on journaling and embracing the recursive process of writing. So our tutoring center, which is separate from the writing center, also uses journaling to some degree. And then we have a one read program that is supposed to stretch across disciplines for, it opens every fall. And they post about journaling and notebooking so that students can dive closer into a reading, specifically the novel or the memoir that we're covering. So we're using these assignments, but we're just struggling to merge that with Canvas. So my need, what I'm asking for help with here is to find a Canvas integrated living document. And I'm emphasizing living document here because workarounds that I've tried and that have been shared with me tend to be static. I'm looking for something that can be built upon and that students really see as a semester-long project that can be recursive for them. Consistent, ADA accessible, and sporadic access. And the sporadic is the second key component for me, because notebooking and commonplace notebooks for the history of this tool is you hear something in the moment and then you write it down. It's not you sit down and generate something and then submit it as an assignment. So I need that living recursive option, and the aha, I'm on the train, or I'm sitting in my living room and I see something on television or in a game, and I make a connection to what we talked about in class or what I read online in class. So the want, Canvas integrated, portability across platforms. Also, I think this is important because we're students, they're on their phones, they're on their tablets. Just sticking it on the desktop or in a situation where they can't have it with them removes for me the sporadic access. Multimodal and accessible, and you'll see as I give you in a few slides the examples, this arts component to me is as important as the textual writing. Text comes in many different options, and I think having those not only covers the equity and accessibility, but it also allows for another entry into understanding and connecting to their lives. And then multiple instructor cross-disciplinary trials of whatever it is that we come up with. So one of the problems that we've had is some of the third-party apps will say, well, we'll give you a trial for one faculty member for 30 days. And that's great if it was just me-centered, but I want to share this for the entire university. And there are other people across disciplines who can use a journaling app or a notebooking app in different ways, and they should be able to do that in the trial too. And so we really need to like test this broader. So in summer of 2022, I decided to try this online in new ways. I've been doing it again in Blackboard for years, and now finally I was going to teach in Canvas. And here is the instructions for what the summer one work looked like. And we did it in OneNote because we have a contract with Microsoft Suite. It seemed like we could kind of use this other app that maybe students knew about. That was our assumption first, that they would know about it. And then I could figure out a way to go in and grade their journals separate and then just make a column in Canvas. What I want to point out here is how long the instructions are. Sorry about that. So this first part is just how to create the space in Notebook in Microsoft, and then how to create their individual things so that I could get a link so that then I could have it. And here is the actual assignment instructions. And while this is all totally accessible, and it was designed by our Center for Learning and Teaching and Design, it was tested sort of a couple of times through different means. It was just a lot. I mean, it's a lot to just take in. So what happens, I have an 8-week semester. The first 4 weeks, only 11 students out of 30 actually managed to complete the first half of the assignments just to get through the how do you create a OneNote account, and then what do you do next? And so 4 weeks, that means we're at midterm, and the majority of students are missing the assignment, not because they're not interested or engaged, but because the system isn't working. And 4 weeks later, eventually, we do have 23 students out of the 30 submit, but they didn't use OneNote. They just basically dumped it all into a Word doc. And I was like, fine, whatever, we just need to finish this. I'm committing to doing this. And I committed to it because this was an intro to creative writing course. This is the point where these students learn about daily writing. They learn about how writing is thinking, writing is analyzing, writing is creating. And so it's built into the textbooks, it's built into the lectures, it's built into the way that they are going to go on and be a writing major and be a writer. So they have to understand how journaling works. Unfortunately, the system got in the way here. So then in fall, I taught several different courses, one of which was a junior senior level creative writing course. Again, these students will be familiar with the idea of writing as constant, writing as learning, writing as daily practice, because they would have had it in the intro to class, or if not mine, another person in my departments. So these students, I said, I don't care how we create this. What I want is you to have that sporadic, consistent access. And they said, okay, great. And I said, I'm not going to give you specific prompts this time. I'm going to give you general themes for the week, because I think that giving the prompts specificity creates more of a reader response and less of an imaginative outlet for creative thinking here. They said, okay, that's great. We're okay with that. And then they said, well, can you give us some check-ins? Because if you don't, they called them check-ups. If you don't, then we will forget. So they were directly asking me for an engagement piece here. I said, sure, right. And so we set these deadlines, and I would just say you need to turn in whatever you have so far. Because I create journaling and notebooking as a semester-long assignment, sometimes I don't have these checkups. I just say, remember to do this, and then I read them at the end of the semester. So for these juniors and seniors, they were really down with the checkups. They were down with loosely guided prompts, but they all decided that Word docs were the only way that they could produce a notebook. And I want to add also, this is a face-to-face class now. The class in the summer was online only. So here's a face-to-face class of juniors and seniors who understand the importance of journaling and why we teach it, because they're writing majors and they're still saying we need a Word doc. Okay, Word doc is okay, but the problem is 1/3 of them created a new document for each checkup. So for them, creating this journal was not unlike creating a regular assignment, just random assignment that they're going to submit. Another 1/3 decided they would just add on to the last of their journal, which was a little bit more like a journal, but again, it's still not sporadic. It's not in the moment. it does build, so it is sort of a living document. And then 25% just couldn't do it. They were like, well, I don't understand the point of submitting an assignment one-on-one. Why can't I just give you this, or why can't we just do it in class? So they totally didn't understand the point, which is okay. Actually, that's pretty common in journaling, that there will be sort of a hiccup there to get students to engage. What I think is important also about the fall 22 course is that the majority of the students were from underrepresented populations. I think there were only 2 students who identified as white cis het. So that to me says this would work if we could find a way to break the separate submissions. If we could find a way to allow students to have that spontaneous access, then they can build what they want, because 60% of them did this assignment. Ultimately, they just didn't understand always how to make it a living document. So this semester, I'm doing this assignment again, but now I'm doing it in online, and I'm doing it in a literature and in a writing course. And the goals here again are belonging and engaging and seeing themselves beyond, how they can engage in this, whatever this is, whatever we're doing in the course, and not only see themselves to graduate, but also see themselves using it in the world beyond. So one of the problems, and we'll start with problems first for a second, is that one student, and only one, I asked this last week, I have 30 in the class, only one student said, I'm having trouble understanding what to write. I want to make sure that my grade is right. That to me says that the whole concept of creative exploration and making these authentic connections from their world is missing. They're looking for the right reader response answer. 3 or 4 students, 3 students, I think, yes, said that they struggled to get on board with remembering to do it, because while I put in the calendar and in this course schedule that it's time to do a journal entry, I don't have an actual due date until the end of this month, until the end of April, when they turn in the whole thing. So some of them reminding themselves has become a hurdle. And again, that's pretty common for this kind of assignment. It wasn't an equipment issue. The vast majority of students who struggled with assignment, it's because of portability and accessibility and usability. So I said to them, you can create your own notebook using whatever app you want. I disallowed Word because it didn't work last semester. So I said, you can do anything else. I just need to have access. So some students were down immediately and they bought subscription apps, which is cool. But I have an equity issue with that, because I would like us to be able to provide a tool for this, and that's low cost or no cost. I don't think students should have to buy something extra to do this when we were providing this sort of mechanism in a previous learning system. So they bought them. Some of them went to Google Docs, and then we had trouble merging Google Docs with Canvas, partly because they didn't know how to share it with me, or our IT doesn't support Google Docs because, as it's been explained to me, we have the Microsoft contract. So students, if they had trouble, they were on their own to solve it. And so the answer there is Google Docs didn't work. Some students would create the journal through these third-party apps, and that seemed to work for them. They would create it, they would write it, they would do the assignment. And then when it was time to share it with me, I didn't have access because they were private. And I would say there were 5 students that finally by week 4, I said, we need to find something else because this isn't working for you, unfortunately. So the success stories, though, I have had students say, I like this assignment overall because I am not a literature major. The course that I'm using it in literature is a gen ed course. I'm not a literature major, but what we're talking about, I'm seeing show up and is helping me make connections to my own ideas and my own beliefs. Using the phrase, my own beliefs, was pretty earth-shattering for me. I was like, yes, this is working. It's working. That student was using Penzu. Another student said, I can see how the ideas of monstrosity and monsters in literature show up in my everyday work, in my job. I see some of the themes that we're talking about. And so they're making intersectional connections here, which extends beyond any example I could provide them in a lecture, I think. I'm really encouraged by what I'm seeing. Overall, there are only 5 students out of 30 who are struggling to complete this as an assignment. So we'll keep going. Here's an example of what this current student group is doing. So the reason that I think journaling and notebooking is so impactful for so many variations and ways and representation is that immediate, sporadic, consistent access. Here's the example from one of the students using Penzu. If you look, here's the little spotlight, if you can see it, I don't know, from her camera. So she was literally watching television in her living room, and something was said in this sitcom episode, and boom, out pops Penzu, and she's making connections. It was much longer, but I just cut a little bit here. So we could see this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like something that we had covered in class came up in something I would never think to include. I don't watch Golden Girls anymore. That's the kind of immediacy I think brings them agency and brings connection to how they can use the information, not only in my class, but beyond. In this middle image, here's a student who suffers through several different types of anxieties and when it comes to tests and exams. And because we're talking about monstrosity, I asked him, can I share this? And he was like, absolutely, because for him, the test is the monster. So even though that week there was not a journal entry requirement because it was exam, 2, I didn't ask any kind of emotional input into the journaling. He's sharing first the monster, which I think is adorable, this little monster out of the exam, and then all of these anxieties and ideas that come with having test fears and anxieties. This is why I say it provides an equitable access for trauma-informed learning. This student took the journal, which is very specifically based in the academic content, and made the connection not only to his own experiences, but also to the compassion piece in his life. So he's emoting, but not in a way that's inappropriate, not in a way that's off topic. He's making connections that, again, I don't know that would come across if we didn't have this assignment. And then finally, this is an example of a student who does use OneNote, and we had trouble getting it up and getting it moving, but it's here. This student loves to use the pencil or pen tool and changes the colors, and every entry is personalized in this way. So why I think journaling helps in the multimodal here is look at the 3 different ways in which they're engaging, how they're producing text without me saying it must be a written thing. Word docs, I'm sure they could input a text, they could input a photo. It's not going to have the same, I think, engagement for them and richness. So these are the tools that we've tried to use over the last 18 months. Some of these seem like they would work well. So like we tried really hard to use Atomic Journals in Canvas. It's a third-party app. It works as a submission assignment thing. So it's not unlike what already exists if a student just writes something and then posts it. I've talked about why Google Docs hasn't worked for students. They've really struggled to make that connection. Some of these apps are accessible or they're not, or they provide 1 or 2 means and modes, but not all of them. And I'm really looking for something that can cross lots of different ways. So I know that in Canvas community, there is the suggestion for groups and setting up discussions. And here's what I think about these individual assignments. I think the groups and discussions really truly is individual assignments. Now, in my course, we keep groups throughout the semester. Sometimes we're working in pairs, sometimes we're 3, 4, 5 students together, sometimes half the class. So I use the group tools quite a bit. Students still have trouble navigating to groups or signing up for groups, and that's okay. We get over that. I can't imagine the gradebook length and the amount of groups they would have to navigate through if I also use the journal in this way. It just seems overwhelming just to conceptualize it. On the other hand, Groups allow, and individual discussion and individual assignments allow for easy speed grader. And one of the problems with these outside third-party apps is that I don't have a grading column for them. So I keep things separately. Students also ask for immediate feedback. Some of them have said, I wish you could go into my journal and post or comment in some way. And because of the privacy mechanisms, I'm not allowed to do that on certain apps. And I just made the decision I wouldn't do it for some and not for all. So groups and discussions and assignments would allow that. So they would get instant feedback. I wonder how they would create that sporadic instant connection. Yes, Canvas has a mobile app, and there are a lot of steps to get in to find your group discussion space to do that. So I still see it as separate, but I can be convinced, I think. This is sort of where we're landing as of last week, and I'm still hopeful that there are other options here. So for the rest of the time, I'm really hopeful that we can talk about ways that journaling or notebooking can be used in Canvas, what you're doing, what's working, what's not working, other workarounds. And again, because I know that this can apply beyond just the humanities, it really does have STEM applications. It's being used now. It's being studied now. I just don't know how to help Canvas see that and help our institution adopt something that would work. So I'll stop now and ask for suggestions and conversation.
At Ames, where I'm at, we actually don't have Canvas. We use D2L. So I have done some trainings, and I've mentioned to some faculty using the groups tool similar to Canvas. So what D2L can do is set up a groups tool. You can set one person per group, and you can automatically enroll people in those groups, and they use it in the discussions. And it doesn't create like a whole big column in the gradebook. It just creates one gradebook item for the student. So really all they have to do is excuse me, navigate to discussions, and then they can post in there. So I mean, it would be ideal if Canvas had something that was similar, where they don't have to sign up for groups, but the instructor could set up ahead of time, like one person per group would be helpful. I know for us, some of the other things we use, because we are a Google app school, so we do use like Google Docs, Google Sheets, and so it does integrate well into D2Ls. And most faculty just if they need to, post links in there, and then that's how they can collaborate with students.
It's really unfortunate that we are not. I think,
yeah,
but there's nothing I can do about that.
I came from a school that was just pretty much Microsoft, and so once I went to Ames, I did see a big advantage of using Google Apps. So because it's pretty applicable. I mean, because a lot of faculty, they can use like one Google Doc for the whole class if they want to collaborate even during a remote session. And so there's pretty big advantages for that. I'm not sure if I can think of anything else. But because we have a blog tool in D2L, but it's not really that good. Not like what you mentioned in Blackboard. So most of the faculty haven't even used that.
Yeah. We're trying. It's just really unfortunate. And I understand the decisions we made for Canvas. I just wish we could find a third-party app that would work. We just haven't yet.
Yeah, and being I'm an instructional designer, but also our D2L admin. So we do have a site for D2L that we can post enhancements like feature requests. So that might be something to explore at your institution if you have an LMS admin that can do something similar for Canvas, because they should be able to at least give some feedback on some requests that you would want for for the system. And the thing with that is on D2L, you just they have to get enough interest from multiple institutions, like to basically vote on it. So that might be something to look at, kind of put together, this is what I would like, and then maybe send that to your admin up there.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. Thank you for that suggestion. Yeah. So any questions?
No, thank you.
Mhm. Well, I don't have anything more. I was really hoping there would be lots of suggestions. I love what you've shared so far, Vinny. Thank you. Yeah, I will reach out and see what else. Maybe just posting on Canvas their community and suggesting something.
Yeah, because in D2L, they have a spot for faculty, or I mean, not just faculty, but all users to post there sometimes for feedback. Sometimes I mentioned for your LMS admin because sometimes they have support personnel that they have contact with at Canvas, and sometimes that can be a little bit better avenue to provide some of that feedback.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Mhm.